This is a public service announcement.
There's this thing that liberals apply to, and it's called horseshoe theory. That is when you have liberals on the top of the horseshoe, and then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you get fascists and anti-fascists. And this is implying that anti-fascists and fascists are one and the same. The problem with this theory is that it doesn't apply to reality, and it also doesn't apply to the context in which both of these things started taking place. In this context, that would mean that the North and the South are one and the same during the Civil War. That would mean Poland and Austria-Hungary are just as the same as the Nazi Germany party during World War II. And a much more recent example, this would also mean essentially that the people over at Standing Rock, the water protectors, are one and the same as the military and the oil sheiks over at Standing Rock. You understand how that theory isn't consistent with reality? But let's look at the example used in fascists versus anti-fascists. The fascists, or in this case white supremacy, has been an outlet for at least as long as colonialism has been a thing. But it wasn't until the Emancipation Proclamation came into effect, where 2 weeks later the Ku Klux Klan was born. The formation of the KKK is the All Lives Matter response to the Emancipation Proclamation. Because at that time, most white people were upset that the slaves were freed and that most of their labor and their economy, it was slowly declining because now they either had to pay their workers or they just didn't have workers. And since then, the Ku Klux Klan and multiple different alt-right, neo-Nazi, and white supremacist groups started uprising, and they got more and more powerful. They started organizing in their communities. They started spreading hateful messages. Not just hateful messages against black people, but hateful messages against Jews, the LGBTQAI+, and people with disabilities. And they did this under the pretense of social Darwinian eugenics, meaning that they believe that white people must weed out all of these other aforementioned races or different groups of people in order to preserve the white race and protect the white people. They do this in a somewhat, self-victimizing sense. They put themselves as the victim for everything that has anything to do with diversity or anti-racism, etc. They say things like diversity is white genocide, or when a woman rejects having sex with you, that is also white genocide. The entire Obama administration was white genocide to them.
I've read in some of the literature that there are some people who think that if Barack Obama is reelected, the storm, something they call the storm, is going to come.
Oh, it's going to happen.
What's the storm?
I fear it. War. And he's going to start it. He's going to start it. I fear it. I feel it. I feel it coming on. And it ain't just me. It's just, it's going to be another war in this United States of America. If he gets elected back to office, it's going to happen. If he gets 4 more years, Barack Obama will ruin this country. And white people will be in concentration camps. And if you don't believe white people can't be in concentration camps, people sadly mistaken. And I believe that we need to be separated. Whites and blacks need to be separated. I don't agree with race mixing.
For those who don't know, social Darwinism is the political ideology, and when I say political, I mean political and not scientific. It takes the survival of the fittest aspect of the theory of evolution and applies it to social groups rather than different species of animals. The thing that it forgets is that it doesn't apply to social groups, it applies to species of animals. If people like Charles Darwin or Peter Kropotkin did look into the science of it just for their political beliefs, then they would have given in to all of those religious rights folks who have been trying to refute it ever since its inception. And the context that social Darwinian law is used in American society today It's actually used in the context of capitalism, which is a man-made structure, which is why there's such an emphasis on destroying capitalism, because it is a destroying force to not just the aforementioned groups that are in danger of capitalism, but to humanity as a whole, which is why white supremacists love neoliberal capitalism so much, because it destroys those aforementioned groups, but it also destroys the entire world. It doesn't take climate change into account. It doesn't take the fact that the economy is sinking further and further and further, with the exception of the wealthy few, and it doesn't take into account that it destroys wildlife, which is a contributing factor for climate change. So ultimately, what you have to understand is that white supremacists, or fascists in this case, are indeed terrorists, and they should not be treated as the same as anti-fascists, because anti-fascism is the exact opposite of this. If not, they seek to destroy this. I guess if you're looking for a key difference between fascism and anti-fascism, is that fascism is the installation of a violent dictatorship by the wealthy few, while anti-fascism is the reaction to the installation of a violent dictatorship by the wealthy few. Therefore, to play the role of a pacifistic liberal centrist sort of makes you look like a culturally tone-deaf idiot. When you see people at protests, when you see people breaking windows, when you see people punching Nazis, this is exactly what they are fighting against. They're not utilizing Godwin's law, slapping the word Nazi on anyone that they don't like. No, they're fighting fascism. They're fighting people who genuinely believe in this fucking nonsense. And granted, not everyone in anti-fascism is a good person. Not everyone in anti-fascism is right about every little thing. Of course, that's impossible to do because human nature is a fucking thing. But to claim that anti-fascism on its own is one and the same as fascism, it is delusional. It is wrong. When the white supremacists see you being a centrist or a pacifist in this context, they see that as more of a weakness rather than someone who is a sensible person. White supremacists are not interested in a debate. They are very similar to ISIS in this respect, because the only thing that they're interested in is killing you. As long as you're dead, it doesn't matter what your opinion is, or how witty and sophisticated or well-researched your argument is. And why do they want you dead? Simple, because you are either one of those aforementioned groups, or you are their opposition.
I want to make sure I understand you. If the goal is white separatism, separating the races, the only way to separate the races is using violence. You're not going to be able to just say nicely, please leave.
If they will peacefully go, then yeah. But if they won't peacefully go, that's the only way, is through violence. It's through making them go. That's it.
And you'd be willing to be part of that. It's a race war you're talking about, essentially.
Very much so.
But here's the thing. If I were to say, fuck you, Nazi, and then the Nazi were to say,
Don't use profanity around me. Let's be civilized. Let's be friends and have a debate about this.
what they are doing is not trying to be moral. They're trying to gaslight you. Keyword gaslight. They're trying to gaslight you into thinking that saying fuck white supremacy is more immoral than genocide, than killing people of different races, than social Darwinian eugenics, than even hanging people in trees for all of the town to see. And you may say, well, I don't believe in white supremacy, and I don't really agree with it, but I do agree with their right to free speech. You have to understand, white supremacy has always had free speech, and no one's taking that away from them. In fact, they have had first-class seating in free speech. Meanwhile, people of color, the LGBTQAI plus community, Jews, and people with disabilities have been fighting for freedom of speech since America's inception. And there are many police officers, people who are supposed to be the good guys or the people who are supposed to maintain order. A lot of them are white supremacists or are associated with white supremacy, or, if anything, have friends who are white supremacists and they do favors for, which is a big reason why there's no trust between the people and the police right now. The swastika is synonymous with the American flag. They're one and the same, which is why you see the American flag hung upside down so many fucking times. So don't pair white supremacists with anti-fascists. Instead, if anything, why not organize in your own city? Maybe make some marches, maybe make some projects to clean the neighborhood, maybe raise some money for the needy, maybe have a cook-off and set up table and start feeding the ones who are hungry in your area. Maybe have a seminar or a workshop on how to defend yourself if a white supremacist confronts you. Or maybe even better yet, maybe have a workshop on what to do if ICE comes into your neighborhood. Anti-fascism can mean any of those aforementioned activities that you can do in your own community. Peace.